fortunate because I was moving to Houston, currently practicing, and I honestly didn't think that I could get a job in teaching, but I tried, and I knew that University of Houston was the premier school in the city of Houston, and so I applied, and they had already actually closed their hiring season, but they needed someone in my field. And Newell Blakely had recently retired, and so they decided to interview me, and I was fortunate enough to get the job. Well, what I didn't know was that I was actually getting a truncated version of the normal process, because normally people apply through a national search process and have interview with the committee, and it's a grueling thing. But I sort of skipped that and had a one-day visit to the campus, and it was just back-to-back sessions all day long with a talk at the lunch hour to the faculty. And I hadn't had any practices. These days people moot this, they practice many times. So it was pretty nerve-wracking to have just graduated a couple of years earlier, and now I'm standing in front of a whole esteemed faculty to give a talk. But somehow I made it, and all I remember is at the end of the day, I was walking back to my car, and for a moment I thought I might pass out. I think I might have been holding my breath all day long. But fast forward 31 years, here I am. So I'm have been extremely grateful every single day. Well, I knew I wanted to practice criminal law because I loved it. Do something connected to that. And so, yeah, I was applying for prosecuting office positions as well as defense, and hadn't taken the Texas bar. That was something of an obstacle. But I think if I hadn't gotten the job, I probably would have ended up teaching at one of the other schools. Because once I realized that there was some interest, this had always been my long-term goal, was to go into teaching. So I was just thrilled that I was able to get the job at U of H, which was my number one choice. There were a number of things that were very different for me. So for one is I came from a large office where there was a huge cadre of prosecutors who were about my age and level of seniority, and it was just a fast-paced, sort of crazy atmosphere that I really loved. And there were a lot of things about that were really fun. And my new job was so different. I was the only woman in a faculty suite of men who were, uh, most of them were considerably older than me. And most of us work and continue to work mostly in a solitary way, with limited interaction. And so I didn't have the same kind of immediate collegiality and social network. And that took a while to develop. But I found a lot of it with talking to students. That's where I found my fun. And the just the constant dialogue about issues mostly came from dealing with my students. And in time, I stopped missing practice. So I'm one of the lucky people, I think, who has had two different professional lives and really loved both. And so honestly, it was hard to leave practice for me. But I never really considered that a problem, because I think you should love being a lawyer if you're going to train lawyers. So I always tell my students that I live through them vicariously, and I beg them to please come and tell me stories, because I do miss the practice world, but I wouldn't have changed a thing. I love teaching more. Well, for me, mostly it was focused on trying to master my craft, and juggle all of the responsibilities that were, that I found myself juggling. But it was a really good time in a lot of ways. I had wonderful friends on the faculty that I developed. I had an excellent mentor in Irene Rosenberg, um, and couldn't have asked for better than her. And I think the school was really coming into its own nationally for the first time. And so rankings were new, and we did very well. We were quite competitive. And there was a real pride around that. Um, we also, I think, were becoming even more of a powerhouse in terms of scholarship and the faculty scholarship. But there were several faculty members who kept us grounded in teaching. And I think that was very important, because while we have done well in the rankings and in terms of national prestige for scholarship, we have never let go of that, um, this other important part of our jobs, which is just connecting with our students. And as a result, we've managed to become a school where almost all of the faculty is rated by the students as above average. So the average faculty member is above average. And that gives me a lot of pride. Yeah, I found myself on the front lines of that, because 6 months before, I had become associate dean for academic affairs. And so we were about to start summer school. It was June 7th, 2001, and we had the part-time class. Back then, the part-time class started at the beginning of summer. So we were about to welcome our part-time class for the first time, and we had no building to welcome them to. And so, apart from securing it and beginning the remediation, which I really wasn't involved in, my role was to figure out where we were going to teach these classes. And then we also had the recent graduates who were going to sit for the bar at the end of July. And there's a process where the law schools have to certify them to sit for the bar. And that requires going through an administrative process for each and every student. Well, my memory of it is that we were told to either work from home or get this, at the Hofheinz basketball pavilion, where we had the deluxe box, and we could work there. Well, that wasn't really good enough, because, again, certifying the students for the bar required going into the law center and getting into the files. And our staff was told that they were not to enter that building because there were mold concerns. So what did they do? They could have just left the students hanging, but instead they put on waders and brought flashlights, and they went in there and they got every student certified for the bar against the dean's orders. Um, and um, and for summer school, that was another really cool story, which is that the whole Houston community, a lot of our alums who were in big firms, offered classrooms with downtown parking and all kinds of, things that they offered. And then South Texas College of Law, one of our sister schools in Houston, offered us big classrooms, that they let us use free of charge. And, we'll forever be grateful because they helped us to get through. But that was really the story for me, which is that we never went offline because our IT department is so great. And they also went in floodwaters to rescue the server. We never missed a day of class of instruction. Everything got rebuilt. The summer school kept going. And it was because the school at the end of the day was not a building. It was the people and the community. And that was what sustained us. And so, years later when Katrina hit, we did the same for one of the New Orleans schools as well, because we knew what they were going through. I think, I love just watching students, start to think like lawyers, as we say. And I do that somewhat in the classroom, in a large classroom. I can see it come through on exams, but where I really see it, where I really feel pride for the accomplishments of my students, is when I teach seminars. I get to know my students, and I watch them start very nervously on this ambitious writing project, and by the end of the semester they have written something they're proud of, that they can use as a writing sample for jobs. But even more than that, they've learned so much about the process of writing and thinking, the critical thinking and the research that is going to serve them for their whole careers. And they become experts in a field as well. They become better experts on their subjects than me, because I haven't done research like they have in all of these different areas. And so that, watching that, it's a little bit like, watching the caterpillar turn into the beautiful butterfly. And it's the most thrilling part of my job. Oh, well, I think we have continued to get stronger and stronger in terms of national reputation, and that's been hard because there are many other schools around the country that have also been making great strides. So moving in terms of rankings can be very hard, but we have stayed very competitive. And I think one of the things that I find really exciting is that despite the downturn in admissions, applications, and LSATs, and all of that, we have managed somehow to not have any drops in terms of our applicant pool. Our LSAT numbers continue to go up, and at the same time, our student diversity has just grown and grown, and the dean has talked a lot about this. And it's absolutely true. I mean, it really is a completely different look of the classroom and the kinds of experiences that people bring. And that, that's been really, I think, transformative of the school as an institution. With regard to the faculty, I think we also have seen some diversification, but it's challenging because you make progress and then someone retires or what have you. And, so again, getting those larger shifts in terms of demographics can be very challenging, but it's something that we are committed to. And I think in the last year, the school's statement about support for diversity and the Black Lives Matter movement, I think that was also part of this evolution and this transformation that we've had, that I can't imagine that would have happened when I started 31 years ago. I I can't even, there were concerns about whether we would be open to hiring someone who was gay, for example. And that was still a concern. And my mentor, Irene Rosenberg, was the first tenured woman, and she had gone through quite a bit in the 70s, which was still very much in people's recollection. And a lot of the same folks were still there. So from where I started to where we are now, I think it's a dramatic change. I hope that we stay a strong teaching school, one that's really grounded in the needs of the legal profession, because especially in the last year and a half with the pandemic, I don't know that there's been a harder time to practice law, with courts being closed and remote appearances and things like that. It's a extremely challenging time, and then the racial and social unrest and those challenges, I think, are going to present a lot of hard questions for us as a society. And lawyers are always at the forefront of speaking for the community and managing those conflicts to move society forward. And so the need for good lawyers now is greater than it's ever been in my lifetime. Although, it was probably the case also in the civil rights era, which was, when I was young, but it will be for some time a very demanding time for lawyers. And so my hope is that the law school will stay focused on its core mission of teaching students and helping to prepare them for the legal profession and for all of the other professions like being judges and legislators and public officials, that go with it, because we are really going to need some good people to manage our governance in the future.